Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1 of The Defenders. Like always, first of all, I'll kind of be non-spoiler-ish about it, but do note that this will be me covering the entire season. I will be talking about things like all over the place, so don't expect everything to be in any particular order. So if you have not seen the entire season, don't spoil this for yourself. Don't spoil the show for yourself. Obviously, like I said, I will be talking like non-spoiler stuff kind of at the beginning, just telling you my feelings about the series entirely, and then when it's all said and done, I'll tell you like, okay, this is the point where spoilers are. So. But first of all, how I felt about it overall, loved it, enjoyed it. I've been so hyped for this, and I think Defenders delivered. I think, obviously, like, you get that feeling of, like, the Avengers coming together again. Obviously, it's on a smaller scale, like, it's a street-level scale. But I think this show did a fantastic job in capturing that, bringing the heroes together, bringing their stories together, and it works so well. The characters gel together in a sense of the fact is that they didn't always gel together, and I like that. It wasn't like a perfect, like the moment they came together, it's like, oh, a perfect storm. It's like, nah, they had their issues. Like, they're all coming in with their own little baggage, their own situations, their own personalities and stuff like that, and it didn't always click together well, but I think that's what makes the show fantastic. Told an amazing story, so good, amazing action, that moment, like, I could not stop getting giddy the moment we had all four of them together. So it's just the first moment that happened. It's just beautiful all around. I cannot praise this. It's not enough. It's so good. I'm so glad this is a thing. So if I will go ahead and leave it there. That's going to be the end of my non-spoiler review. But if you have not, maybe you've only seen one or two episodes, like, do yourself a favor. Finish the rest of this if you haven't, and if you haven't even started it, change that now. This is so good, and I personally feel like it's so worth your time. But at the end of the day, that is just my opinion. So. Right here, right now, is the end of the spoiler-free stuff. From here on out will be spoilers. So if you decide to stay, you're okay with things being spoiled for you because you just don't care, or you have, seen all of it like I did. So once again, you have been warned. So let's get into it. Oh, dude. For one, took me completely by surprise. A lot of stuff in this show. For one, it ended up being shorter than I thought it was. I thought it was going to be like a full 13 episode thing. I know I could have easily seen that. I kind of had a feeling going in, like, this is probably going to be a little bit shorter, isn't it? Didn't expect the 8 episode thing, but like as things were progressing, I was like, oh, the way this story's heading, like, this seems like it's going to be like an 8 episode arc. But nevertheless, so much going into this. Sigourney Weaver's character, Alexandra, completely misinterpreted like her role in this show. I thought we had like a Wilson Fisk, type of situation of like kind of getting mixed up. You're a crime boss that kind of happens to get mixed up with the Hand or something like that. That's what I thought we were kind of dealing with. But it's like, no, she is actually one of the Hand, like one of the top 5, actually the top member of it. And I think this, because I remember people really had their complaints, like, because I don't think I said much about it originally back when season 2 of Daredevil came out. Like, you never really got too much of understanding what the Hand was all about. I think Iron Fist kind of remedied that a little bit, but I feel like this is where we really get to understand like what the Hand's all about, who they are, their background and everything, finding out that they're actually originally from Kunlun, which kind of took me by. I was like, holy crap. So you guys, and also because the moment she started talking, because I thought it was interesting, like from the very beginning, they already set like her position, because you saw the way Gao acting around her. I was like, you've never seen Gao act like that towards anybody, even Wilson, but it was almost like there's moments you looked at her like, are you sure we should be kind of going ahead like this? Almost like she was taking orders. I was like, really? Like, Gao doesn't seem like type, Gao's kind of got her own thing going on, but for her to be kind of taking orders from somebody like that, it's like, and the fact is that when she was talking about a certain musician, like she had personal experience with, I was like, you're old like Gao, aren't you? You're part of the Hand. Just wasn't expecting her to be like literally the head of the Hand, and finally understood why the Hand is called the Hand, because literally 5 people from Kunlun had went against what the monks and stuff wanted there at Kunlun, so they were kind of banished. So I mean, like I said, I just completely misinterpreted her character, and that took me completely by surprise at what her role was in this. Legitimately, I went into thinking she was like some kind of crime boss. I didn't know she was kind of going to be the quote unquote immortal badass that she was. And I do say was, like, her dying caught me off guard. I was like, holy crap. I was like, oh man, that kind of sucks that she got killed off, but it's like, did not see that coming. I get with the camera angle, you're kind of like, yeah, I was like, is she, but yeah. She got it. I like to say she got Cottonmouth. Pretty much happened to him. I mean, granted, like she got it like near the end of the series, whereas Cottonmouth kind of got like in the middle of Luke Cage. But nevertheless, other things I loved, like the biggest one, honestly, one of the biggest things I was curious about going into this too was where would Jessica and Luke be? Like that was like, obviously everything else played a big role, but I was really curious about where their relationship would be, considering the fact is when they left things, all things were pretty awkward. You know, the last time Jessica and Luke talked, he was Kilgrave at the time. So, and she shotgunned him in the face. So it was like, yeah, I love that awkwardness of when they come back together too. It's like, yo, you didn't call, yeah, but you didn't call neither, so you didn't get in contact. It's like, fair enough, you know? And just that awkwardness of like, there was something there, but it was like, oh, we just went down our separate paths and stuff like that, and having to explain that. I mean, that's kind of tying into what I kind of alluded to earlier of like every character coming in with their own baggages and stuff, and why this isn't like, this definitely wasn't some like well-oiled machine of like they gel together. Like everyone's got their own situation coming into this. That's why I think they did a fantastic job of this. Like the Defenders isn't just like some slap together thing, in my opinion. I'm looking at it like it's like 0.5 to every show. It's like 2.5, you know, season 2.5 for Daredevil and season 1.5 for Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist, kind of like showing you like that the aftermath, like kind of the aftermath of their respective shows and what kind of position it's left them in. Like Jessica's going through this phase, like, I mean, obviously where we saw season 1 leave her off, it's like people are kind of blowing up her phone of like, yo, they heard about what she did with Kilgrave. But it's like, for her, it's like, I'm not trying to be a hero. She has Trish calling her, it's like, I'm not a hero. Don't use the H word. I'm just me. She dealt with a personal demon, a thing that was very personal, a traumatic thing from her past, and she had to stop a very bad guy with superpowers, and it became such a public thing, and now people are coming. It's like Jessica Jones, oh my god, but she just wants to be left alone because she's like, I've got to deal, you know, I'm trying to deal with her own shit, you know. She's like, I'm not no hero, because I think Jessica doesn't want to be, you know, people have these high expectations of her. She said, I guess she feels like ultimately she's just gonna let everyone down, so she's like, I mean, that's the beauty of her character, because she's kind of like the shit talker of the group, or just kind of like, what? You're stupid. Once again, I brought this up originally. I loved it in the trailers when her and, like, you know, not even just her, everyone looks at, like, Matt in his Daredevil suit, and it's just kind of like, what are you doing? It's like, even at the end, it's like, it's the suit again. Just like, oh yeah, nice ears. They're horns. I just love that he's literally the only one that has like a secret identity amongst everyone. I mean, I guess depending on the circumstances, they didn't really, I mean, it would have helped to have one, but still, like, no, like, everyone's just walking around as themselves. Like, yeah, you know our faces. So, I mean, Danny's still kind of caught in the, like, of, like, that spectrum of, like, oh, yeah, he's just some rich kid. So, that, like, that spectrum is just kind of like no one really knows, unless you're in the inner circle of what went down in Iron Fist, you wouldn't know what he does, who he really is, and what he's capable of. Luke, all over the place. Jessica, all over the place. Like, in the sense of, like, knowing who they are, so... But, cause that was something I think I brought up in Luke Cage too, is like, the fact of the matter is, if you don't like, I only know about this because obviously I've come across stuff on the internet about it, but, cause Jessica and Luke are superheroes I'm not that familiar with. I've brought it up before. I only really know about Luke only because of the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon. Jessica Jones, I only know about her because of the TV show. So, I didn't know going into it, like, her and Luke have a thing in the comic books. Like, to me, I think the best equivalent is, like, Luke and Jessica is to, like, Peter and Mary Jane. It's just one of those like, yo, it's meant to be type of thing, which always makes me a little sad because of the whole like Luke and Claire thing. It's like, oh, you're so well together. You're so good, but then at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but ultimately that's not going to pan out. I mean, granted, you know, the TV show might just be like, hey, we're going to cast that out because they've already kind of made things kind of like, I mean, even with their respective situations, I think there's still that feeling there. I even love that conversation of like when at the end, like, yo, Jessica, like, don't like, you know, hit me up, you know, you do have friends, you know. And then she's like, yeah, we could go for coffee sometime. And you had Luke kind of pausing and it's like, I don't think, I mean, I think Jessica was legitimately like, oh, let's go for coffee. But, you know, if, you know, watching Luke Cage, you're like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But she probably didn't. The double entendre as there is, I mean, so I thought that was pretty cool. I got so many other things. Kind of talking about Danny's character a little bit. Now, for one, I will go ahead and mention that I'm probably in a minority of people who are like, oh yeah, like I walked away liking Iron Fist. I get where people's criticisms come from. It still didn't make me like enjoy the show any less. I still think it did a very good job because a thing I want to kind of tap into a little bit is my experience with Danny, much like Luke Cage, is only from the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, and that Danny is very different from the Danny in the TV show, and I thought that was kind of an interesting aspect, because Danny, I've seen from, like, you know, in Ultimate Spider-Man was a very chill dude, but then you have Danny in the show, and he's, like, very angry, and that's, like, his biggest thing is, like, his anger kind of consuming him. But I feel like in this season, I mean, with this, I feel like they let Danny's character kind of breathe out a little bit. Like, kind of like, obviously he still has some of those anger issues, but it's like, we got to see that lower silly side of him, kind of constantly people referencing the fact is, like, jokingly, like, man, you were so stupid. Like, why? You're a hero and you're this stupid? This amateur hour for you? Like, I thought that was so interesting that people, and just like the moment, like, you know, they're in the restaurant and everything, he's like rocking back and forth in his chair and he's eating food just... It's just, I think they took time to kind of develop, like, okay, you got to see one side of Danny's, like, personality, because that was him dealing with his whole situation. Now kind of see more of that lighthearted side of him, too. Don't get me wrong, he's still dealing with everything, because he's dealing with the whole, like, he left his home unprotected, and now it's gone, and he, you know, blames himself for that. It's like, to him, you know, what this ultimately comes down to is fault for him. So it's like, I got to take responsibility for what I've done. And it was actually kind of interesting. The fact is, and the trailers kind of alluded to this, but I feel like he pushed for it the most. It's like, hey, we need a team. Because more so than anyone, like, everyone didn't want to get involved to a certain extent. And I thought that was kind of a pretty cool way of handling it. Like, you had everyone being very against it from the beginning. Like, Jessica has her own reasons, like she doesn't do teamwork. I think Matt, like, I think a big thing in the reason why Matt didn't do this, and like, you know, not even just being a solo artist, but I think it's also because the fact of the matter is, like, the last time he teamed up with someone, it, you know, it was with Elektra and he got her killed. So I'm sure he wasn't willing to go down that route again. So that was his big reason for it, I'm sure. But it's just like, I guess because he knows, like, because he, you know, Matt cares about people, and even though he doesn't really know any of these guys, like, he didn't want to take the chance of getting them involved, getting the people that they loved involved. It's like, yeah, I've kind of got mixed up in this fight. I'll fight it, but I won't, you know, get you guys involved too. But like I said, they had their rocky start, they had their issues and stuff like that. Kind of going back to the whole Danny's personality thing of, like, when they had Sawande captured and Matt wrapped his, like, cane around him with the wire, and then, like, Dan be like, oh, that's cool. You know, Luke be like, well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of cool. I just thought that's so cool, and that's another thing too. Setting up is much like the Jessica and Luke relationship. I was also very curious about the Luke and Danny relationship, because I think I brought this up. I don't know if it was during Iron Fist or Luke Cage, but I know that they are kind of in the comic books, that, you know, the little bit of knowledge I do have, it's like, I am aware that they are kind of like bros, that they even start a business, Hero for Hires. You know, so I'm also curious to see whether anything will come from that going forward. I'm very curious, especially now that they've met. But I feel like they gelled very well together. And it's like, the fact of the matter is, obviously it had a rocky start because it came from different positions of, like, you know, Lucas looking at Danny like, oh, you're coming at this from a point of privilege. But it's like, Danny's like, you don't know who these people are and what they're capable of. But he's like, you're here, you have the potential, essentially telling Danny like, hey, you're coming at it from, like, such a low angle. With your position, with your whole connection to grand industries, you could hit them the hand from higher up, but you're starting with these low people on the totem pole, like someone like Cole, which is still sad about that whole situation. Because, I mean, especially when they add in the family element of like, oh, his brother Sean kind of like died within the confines of the show. But you also find out their sister was Candace. And it's just how that all played out. It's like, man, that family like stuff hit that family hard. And it broke my heart when that mom was, you know, crying to Lucas. Like, all her babies are gone. I was like, that sucks. But getting back to what I was bringing up before. I mean, and it's kind of like plays a role with everything of like how each one of them met. I love the circumstances of like Luke and Danny met because it's like, they're like on opposite sides of this whole situation, because they're like, they kind of thought each other were enemies, and like seeing like Danny try and fight Luke, and Luke is just standing there like, trying to hurt me, bro? And then like it takes Danny summoning the Iron Fist to like knock Luke out. I just thought that was so cool. And then Jessica and Matt being her lawyer, and then like him following her, but then she following him, and seeing all like what he does, and showing you the detective that she is, and being like, yo, I figured it out. You're Daredevil. You don't want to show everyone your identity. It's not going to take long for them to figure it out. And I love Danny constantly pointing out, but you're blind. How can you be Daredevil? You're blind. So, which is kind of interesting. You would think. I mean, I guess it's something he's never come across before, but I mean, because like they're very closely tied, and the fact of the matter is of their training and stuff like that. So I think it's just kind of interesting. He should know that there's a lot more to this with him being able to channel his chi and summon the Iron Fist. You should be able to say like, well, there's a lot more to this whole situation. So, but once again, like I said, I feel like this season kind of pointed out, Danny, you're an idiot type of like storyline, and I thought that was kind of cool. I also appreciate it before the characters even came together, and it's something they kept up with like throughout this season, is like the fact of the matter is that they had these different kind of like filters / kind of like coloring for every respective hero. Like obviously Matt's a little bit more red, Jessica's a little bit more blue, and then you have Luke being a little more yellow and a little more greenish with Danny, and I thought that was such a cool way of filming that and representing them kind of like it sets the tone for almost like not just a hero, but their side of the story, their perspective. It's like almost like you're bringing a little bit of their show with each one of them. So, and that was kind of a cool thing too of that they all brought their little bit of their own A game to this. I love that everyone kind of went all detective mode and just like trying to follow leads and stuff like that, and obviously eventually coming together and everything. But I just thought that was so beautifully done, especially was it Midland Circle, like when Danny shows up, and just that was the first time once again they all were together fighting together in that hallway and stuff. I was like, dude, that's so sick. It's like, dude, and just everyone showing up and everything. I just thought that was so badass. And I do like that excuse me, sorry. I do like the fact is that, because Claire is kind of like the foundation of this group. I don't think she's really had, I'm saying her, I don't think she really had too much interpretate, like talking with everyone else. She's kind of the ties that bind everyone. She's actually why Luke and Danny met, which eventually led to all of them meeting anyway, As, Danny would kind of put it, as like the fact of the matter is this means something. That we all happen to go to the same place at the same time, that's got to mean something. Like we're supposed to fight together. Especially because Colleen was kind of the one that kind of pushed him to like get more people in this fight. But, Danny being like, no, this is our fight. We have to handle it. The hand is his responsibility. So I am a little sad that we never really got to see a lot of like what the other members of the hand could really do. Like what Sawande's like whole thing could do. We saw him kind of using it against Luke, but it didn't really work considering who Luke is. But him or Alexandra, like we didn't really get to see what she was capable of, because there was a moment where Murakami was about to challenge her because of this whole situation. And I love that whole situation of like the like falling apart of their group. It's like as the defenders kind of have their rocky start, we also see like the hand kind of having that same situation. It's like, but they make it go like, yeah, we've had our problems always. Like we've never always agreed on things. Things have kind of got heated. We try to assassinate each other every once in a while over the centuries. And I thought that was just kind of a nice thing of like, you live as long as they have, things aren't always going to work well because everyone's going to have their own decisions about how things should be run. Gal pretending to kind of be along with Alexandra, but at the same time working with Murakami to be like, yeah, you're right, we can't really trust Alexandra's judgment in all of this. So, because I love that this was about different things for different people. Like obviously at the end of the day, it was all about immortality for all of the Hand, but especially for Alexandra because she was dying. Like, even though they've lived as long as they have, like, eventually it doesn't stop their bodies. It's still from taking a toll on their body. So eventually her body was catching up to her. That's when going back to me thinking she was just some regular crime boss. I was like, oh man, she's just some rich lady that got mixed up with them. Basically the whole Harold situation I thought kind of similar. It was like, no, completely different from the Harold situation. But I thought that was just so beautifully done of like constructing why they're together, what their ultimate goal is, that it is simply immortality. But the others wanted to go back home to Kunlun. I mean, yeah, that still played a role in the whole like immortality thing for them, but I think it was also like wanting to see their home after such a long time of being banished. But more so for Alexandra, it was just purely the immortality that kind of reigned true with that whole situation. Obviously diving into Elektra, kind of being like the force that she was in this season. And I thought that they did a very good job of kind of like making her kind of very feral at the beginning, because it's just kind of interesting seeing that language and stuff like that will come back to you. I'm like, right, because it's like when Harold died and came back, at least when we saw him die within Iron Fist, when Ward ended up killing him and he came back, he wasn't himself. He was a little off kilter, and we kind of see that represented with Elektra. But we also see like, oh, certain things were just kind of left behind because effectively, like, she's like, yeah, we kept certain things, but other things, it's like they're not necessary. So like her memories and stuff like that were stripped away. So because she was no longer Elektra, she was their Black Sky. So it's like, you don't need an identity. You're our ultimate weapon. And it's kind of interesting that because Alexandra put so much faith and belief in her Black Sky, even when everyone else had their reservations about it, because it turns out the Black Sky thing wasn't, because the way they make it seem like it was all 100% the Hand, it's like, no, that was 100% Alexandra's thing that everyone else reluctantly went along with. They're like, sure, if this is what you really believe, but it's like no one ever had as much faith in the whole Black Sky thing as her. But the way like Nobu went on about it, like in Daredevil and stuff like that, you would think like, oh yeah, this was like some like big important thing to them. It's like, it's only important to Alexandra. Everyone else is just kind of, if it gets us what we want, sure. So I thought that was kind of an interesting like take on that, you know. So, but getting back to it, like I did appreciate that being an element in the story too, of like Matt dealing with the fact is that this is Elektra, and how, I mean, this is the woman that he loved, and now she's back, you know. He thought he lost her, but now she's back, but she's not herself. But every time they interact, like, she hesitated, like, every time. And there are multiple times throughout the episode you see it, too. I mean, throughout the season that you see it, too, because every time she walks by a pair of sides, she kind of stare at them a little bit. You know, something inside of her, like the Black Sky project kind of failed because it didn't strip away all there was to Elektra, that there was enough there that Matt could reach, and it slowly but surely brought Elektra to the surface, but it still wasn't enough to completely remove the Black Sky aspect to her, because, you know, at nearing the end, she was Elektra, but she was also still Black Sky. But it seemed more so like she's like, oh, I'm not running from who I was. And that's kind of a conversation she has with Danny, the whole like running from destiny. Like, you know, Danny ran from whatever his situation was, you know, he ran from his destiny. What was he searching for? And then she took her destiny by the throat and was just like, yeah, I'll make it my own, you know. Basically, she made her destiny her bitch type of thing, you know. I thought it was kind of a beautiful thing of like how Elektra ended up finding her way to Matt's place. Like, you know, she had left everything, like she had left like Alexandra and going to Matt's place and just kind of slept in the bed and everything, and what that meant, you know. I mean, other things too, much like it, like I think I said this earlier, but if not, I'll just go ahead and say it now. I don't remember if I said it earlier. But the whole thing about like all the heroes coming together, it's weird seeing them all in the same show. Obviously, you're used to seeing Jessica and Luke in the same show, sure, but it's like, it's so weird seeing them all together interacting. It's like every time I see like Jessica talking to Matt or Luke and Danny talking, I'm like, oh, so weird. And at the same time, you have that with like everyone's characters from each respective show. You have like Trish from Jessica Jones talking to Karen from Daredevil, and just side note, Foggy with the short hair too. I like what every character represented in this. Like, you know, you had Karen and Foggy still representing that side of wanting like Matt to leave this life behind him because he's, you know, retired from being Daredevil, which is kind of an interesting thing, and him struggling with that because Matt had always struggled with that duality of life, but for him it was like, you know, eventually it's kind of like, this is my life, this is a part of me, like, you know, I need to stop fighting it, you know, and accept it, because the fact of the matter is, I'm good at what I do, and I want to protect this city that I love, you know? That's all there is to it, you know? And you even have that moment near the end that Foggy's like, oh, you know what, fine. Yeah, I wanted to keep you away from this as long as possible, you know? Because for them, it's like, we care about you. They care about Matt, and they just don't want him hurt and everything. That's why everything at the end, when they think, you know, Matt's dead, it hits him so hard, especially Foggy, because it's like, I told Matt to kind of suit up. I literally brought his suit to him. He blames himself because he's like, I'm the one that was like, hey, bro, I'm going to help you out, you know. They can never know Matt Murdock and Daredevil are the same, because not only will your life be turned upside down, mine will kind of be too. So it's like, hey, bro, I got your back. We're family. I'm going to help keep that balance. So obviously we know Matt's alive by the end of it. So I am curious still, like, going into Daredevil season 3. A lot of stuff I might as well kind of really bring it up now, since I'm talking about like where everyone will stand like in the next season of their respective shows. I think when it comes to the TV shows, I think Punisher is next. But I think the one that's currently in production, I could be wrong, but I think I remember hearing like stuff like, you know, set stuff about Jessica Jones, so I think that's going to be the next one. So I would assume it's like Jessica Jones season 2, Daredevil season 3, then Luke Cage season 2, and then Iron Fist season 2. I assume it would work like that, but I mean, we'll just kind of have to wait and see. I wonder, is like 2018 going to be really packed or not, especially considering, you know, without going too deeply into it, the whole Disney and Netflix split. If you have not heard about it, I highly recommend you do some research on it. It's a weird, it's an interesting situation. I hate that it's a thing that is turning out like that, but it is interesting. It does make you wonder, because like the TV shows are being left alone for now. Only like the movies are being taken off of Netflix because of the whole like them like taking a lot of their properties away. Granted, like, you know, like I said, they are leaving the TV shows for now, but a lot of that stuff ain't going through to 2019 anyway, so we're just gonna have to wait and see on that developments anyway. But I am curious to see like where all this will go. But getting back to the point I was trying to make earlier, is like going into like season 3, like, you know, when it's revealed that Matt is alive, like in Daredevil, will like Foggy continue that being like, you know, because season 1 and season 2, he's always had his reservations because like what Matt has done constantly like interfered with everything. It's like, yeah, it messed with the whole Frank Castle trial, and then just finding out that Matt had been lying to him for so many years in, you know, season 1. So it's definitely going to be interesting. There is something I do know a little bit, just because I've read certain things. This is most likely spoilerish, but because I looked it up like what, a year ago, when I was looking after like season 2, because I was kind of curious. So I read a little bit about the Hand, not too much. It does seem that at some point, Matt is part of the Hand. I don't know whether that's something we're going to delve into at all in season 3 or not, like with the way him and Elektra kind of like quote unquote die together at the end of at the end of this. So it's like, I'm curious to see whether he's kind of brought up to kind of be part of the Hand or not, because the Hand isn't dead. Like, no matter what the circumstances are, most of the big players, yes, have been removed from the situation, but the fact is that, you know, Gal is still alive, obviously. She always finds the way to kind of shrink back into the shadows before things kind of get too hairy, but most of the Hand has been wiped out. Granted, that's the top people. The Hand is a global organization, so it's like they're members all over the place in different facets of everything, you know, so. But the fact of the matter is, he's at this church or whatever, and like there's some nuns taking care of him, so I'm curious where he's at. But immediately my brain goes, I'm thinking season 3 is going to have to deal with a lot with Matt's mom, because that's a storyline we've yet to tackle so far. Because like his mom got brought up in season 1 and she's not been mentioned since. It's like, oh yeah, when sick, it's like, oh yeah, asking the nuns like, so what about the mom? And then the sister was like, well, kind of almost like that's a story all on its own. So it's like, huh? Because there was something that was it. I forgot that was season 1 or not. There was a moment where I think Matt is dreaming or something, and there's like a nun kind of leaning over him. So I'm wondering, is that supposed to be his mom? Is she like a nun or something like that? Because we don't really know much about her at all. Like the reason why Matt's dad was not able to get in contact with her, why he was never with her. Like she's never really come up in conversation. His dad always has, sure, but never his mom. So I'm curious if they're going to play a role going forward, as well as this whole situation of him possibly being brought into the hand. And if he ever is brought into the hand, what would that mean for him and Danny? Like Danny's sole purpose is to crush the hand, as like Claire and Colleen kind of constantly bring up, is like he is the Iron Fist, which he won't let anyone forget that he is. So I'm also curious by the end of this, like what does Stick's death mean going forward for Matt? I mean, there's so much there too, because it's like, yeah, Matt and Stick never always saw eye to eye, but at the very least, they did have like a situation of it was almost like Stick was the closest thing he had to a father. No matter what, there's their ups and downs and everything, and I'm curious what that means going forward. Especially like I doubt Elektra's dad too. So once again, that kind of brings up the whole conversation of like, well, where does she go from here? Like like Elektra, even when she kind of took over the hand momentarily after Alexandra died, well, after she killed Alexandra, she never really cared too much about the hand. She just had her own motives of like, I want to survive. So it's like obviously Matt's still alive, so I'd assume that she's still alive too. Granted, she needs the substance to stay alive. I guess like without the substance, she'll eventually just kind of have a normal human lifespan. So like the whole point is like to live on forever and never have to die. She wanted to kind of like always have Matt by her side. So like I said, the whole like, it seems like that might have been her motive from the very beginning, like to have Matt be there with her at the very end, so that I don't know. I'm very curious to see where like she goes going forward. Will she will the hand have any interest in her or not? Once again, like I brought up earlier, the whole like storyline of like Matt possibly being part of the hand and stuff like that. So many routes that could go down. But not even just them. There's like all the other shows too. Like you have like Jessica Jones, for example. Like what does that mean going forward for Jessica? Because Matt's sacrifice kind of like, I think, that's another reason why she didn't want to get close to people. Like, because it would mean caring and then like potentially more people to lose. Obviously that's why she keeps her distance from like Luke after like their history is severely complicated, so Jessica like to keep herself at a distance. You could say that's kind of her defense, like her like being kind of a smart ass and drinking and stuff like that is her defense mechanism. I like the fact is that when they went to go rescue Danny, they're on the train and everything, and it's like the fact of the matter is that's how you superhero in style. It's like, oh, you don't take a cab there, you take a train. That's amazing. And they're just sitting there, and she sees this guy's beer, and she's just kind of like looking at it, and she gets it and starts drinking, and they're just Luke and Matt look at her, and she says, "It's been a long week." I love it. But basically, Matt's sacrifice kind of lit something underneath like her fire, like to kind of get back into Alias investigation. So once again, kind of playing into that whole like 0.5 season thing of like leading us into the next season and into where our character stands. And I think this was a very good. I can't praise it enough for the fact is the show did a very good arc of taking you these characters from where they were in their previous seasons to this, going to where they are like into her future season. So I'm curious to see where Jessica will be, going forward. Obviously, like Malcolm's there to kind of help her. Malcolm's kind of been the one that kind of always kind of represented the giving a damn anyway. Obviously, Trish doing the same of wanting her to be a hero. But it seems like, this whole situation has kind of made her grow too. And I think that was kind of, because Stick was like, hey, he wanted, and it's like, yeah, Danny can't lead this group against this battle against the hand. It has to be you. From the very beginning, Stick's always wanted Matt to be at the forefront too. Side note, what about the dude that Stick talked to at the end of, when he first popped up in season 1 at the end, he was asking like, when the doors open, do you think he'll be ready? And Stick was like, I have no idea. It's like, what about that dude? Because Stick is supposed to be the last of the Chaste, so what about that dude? We haven't seen hide nor hair of him since season 1, so what does that mean for him? I will also note, kind of along with, like I brought up earlier, that there's some set stuff that got released about Jessica Jones season 2. Some interesting developments I heard about. I saw one photo associated with something. Obviously, I won't spoil it, because it's like heavy spoilers. I wish I didn't know about this certain thing. I don't know the context behind it, but still, there's kind of an interesting thing. You might know if you've seen anything about it. I haven't looked into it. It's just something someone else had talked about, and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So there's some Jessica Jones stuff that I thought was kind of interesting that popped up. I'm just curious about the context. So I'm very interested to see where they go in season 2. Like, especially now that, you know, all of this is kind of going public and everything, and she's back in the spotlight. But it also seems like she is kind of not. She's a combination of the Jessica Jones we've always known. Because even with the whole Kilgrave situation, Jessica was already set up to already be kind of having this personality, kind of being the way she is. But now we're kind of at keeping that, but probably also keeping the fact is that, you know, Jessica's very good at her job and everything, to the point that she actually, you know, she even knew about Matt's past and stuff like that, because to make the girl Lexi kind of feel better about the whole, like, John, like, you know, when she was investigating John and everything, like, to make her feel better about, like, oh, whether her dad was actually a good guy or not. Like, she referenced Matt's whole situation, you know, Matt's dad's whole situation. So I thought that was kind of cool. So I'm very curious to see, like, where that all kind of takes us going forward. Because we also see, I guess this kind of plays a role in the whole thing of, like, showing you that the hand is still alive and well. It's the fact of the matter is that the governor, like the mayor's office, shut down that stuff. Like, multiple times, like, Trish tried to talk about it, but, like, when she tried to talk about it on her show, it got shut down. And then immediately, like, the mayor's office kind of released a statement being like, oh yeah, the whole exploding building and stuff like that, that was something else. Which is kind of interesting, because I was like, they're not going to suffer any ramifications for a building exploding. It's like, no, because that would force them to kind of admit that something was kind of going on beneath, like, the surface of things. So I'm guessing it's like, maybe there's some high-ranking people in the mayor's office who are just like, yeah, we don't want to let people know, like, what was really going on. Like, oh yeah, it was some issues. It was some building issues and stuff, like, blah blah blah, you know. So I'm curious to see, will any of that follow them into Jessica Jones 2 or not? Probably not. Like, you know, because, like, more so, like I said, entering this whole situation, like, the whole hand situation was more Matt and Danny's fight, but it brought in Luke and Jessica too, because it involved the people that they cared about. And also, when it comes to talking about Luke, I am curious to see him in season 2. Obviously, you know, in this he referenced like Shades and Mariah, trying to figure them out, but they kind of go on silent for a while. I do love the fact is that Turk kind of popped up. He's kind of like the go-to, just kind of like, you need some information for some low grunt, you know, talk to Turk. But the fact of the matter is, like, he had an interesting conversation with Stick, where Stick was kind of like, yeah, you want to say, like, you're trying to put this whole, like, Carl Lucas thing by you. Essentially, you know, his prison time and stuff behind him, which is like, yeah, this is a new lease on life, you know, he's kind of got that thought process. But I think it's definitely going to be interesting when he goes forward, because Stick did also bring the fact up of, like, you know, hey, you're a lot more powerful than you let on. Like, stop holding back, essentially. So it's like, when the time comes, like, will he stop holding back? Like, what that means going forward for him in season 2, where him and Claire will stay in season 2. For now, they seem really good, but once again, the whole him and Jessica thing, they cross paths again. It's like, let's stay in contact. So, you know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, dude, it's going to be interesting to see, like, what it is. Like I said, maybe for the show they will never tackle the whole Jessica and him relationship. Maybe that's why they make things so awkward between them, to make it so that there's less chance of them getting together. Or maybe it's a fact is making things awkward, so it's just that much more of a boom when they finally come back together, because there's, like I said, there's still something there. There's that little spark, you know. So also, like, what does it mean going forward for Misty and Claire? For Claire, you know, obviously still trying to find her role in all this. She doesn't have any superpowers yet. You know, her and Colleen, once I brought her earlier, like the whole, like, conversation of, like, they're the foundation. Like, Claire kind of is a foundation that kind of connects all the heroes. Like, she's just kind of like, she acts as kind of a moral compass as a helper to everyone that has abilities, you know. She just always finds her way around people like them, and just, I'm curious to see what they decide to do with Claire going forward. Like, will she solely be on Luke Cage, or will we see her continue to bounce between all the shows? It seems like for now she's going to be purely set in Harlem, because, you know, Luke Cage was the first show that she popped up a lot in, but she also popped up a lot in Iron Fist too. So I'm curious, like, where she'll stand in it, like, you know, going forward. Like, will she even make any more Daredevil appearances? Will she make any Jessica Jones appearances or not? I kind of really quick about the Jessica Jones thing. I appreciate the fact is that her and Hogarth are still not on the best of terms. Like, I mean, understandably so, after the whole Kilgrave situation, a lot of blood is on, like, her hands. Because that's something we haven't really tackled either, is, like, how she got from there to where she was basically talking to Foggy at the end of season, or roughly near the end of season 2, being able to be in a position to help Danny in season 1 of Iron Fist. You know, it's like, I mean, I guess, you know, it shows you just how good Hogarth is at her job. So I'm curious to see, like, where her Jessica stand going into season 2 because they're not on the best of terms. But she still had Foggy looking out for Jessica, which kind of helped everything kind of play out the way it did. Like, that's how Matt ended up becoming her lawyer in the first place with that whole connection. So, but getting back to what I was bringing up earlier, I kind of went on a tangent there, is I'm also curious about Misty. Man, Misty got it hard in this, like, obviously, trying to help everyone out. She's trying to figure everything out, but it's like, she's in the middle. She just can't quite get the puzzle pieces quite where they need to be. But, she's a good cop and she's trying to do her job, and she's trying to help out Luke. But Luke is like, yo, let me protect you. Don't want you getting mixed up in all of this. They're trying to keep her at a safe distance with all of this. Sadly, everything ended with her losing her arm. Interestingly enough, that's actually the same arm that got shot back in season 1 of Luke Cage, wasn't it? That, like, she hit a, like, vein or whatever that, like, Claire had to tie off. That's kind of interesting that it would be that same arm. They don't like Misty's right arm for whatever reason. Don't know why. But now she's lost it. Though Colleen was like, oh yeah, Danny, owns some places that could really possibly help. So, like, I guess a prosthetic arm, maybe something like, I don't know, like, what does that mean going forward into season 2? Like, I mean, where will she stand after all of this? Because, the whole, like, oh, like, her new captain being kind of like, oh, yeah, you're going, well, because I was also curious, like, why no Priscilla? But I guess, like, Priscilla was only there for this particular situation. She was just kind of an intermediary person until, like, they found a new captain for replacement, I guess. It was just because of the whole Luke Cage situation, why she kind of came in, but I guess, like, she might not pop up in season 2. Whatever the case may be, I'm wondering, will, like, Missy suffer any ramifications going forward? I mean, it seems like this, it's like, oh yeah, Colleen's kind of like, oh, you'll kind of be back to you again. And she's like, maybe. So, you see Misty almost being kind of down about it. So I'm curious to see whether it's just like where her mindset and where she's going to be in when it comes to season 2 of Luke Cage. And then finally, also, like, Iron Fist, where both Danny as well as Colleen are going to be going into season 2. Obviously, Colleen dealt with the whole Bakuto situation. She ended up putting him down. Like, because for her, like, something she brought up I thought was kind of interesting. The fact is that she compared her and Danny to both kids who are still looking for their families. And Bakuto kind of coming back to represent, like, that family coming back to haunt her, like, that what she believed in so heavily is now come back to kind of like, oh, you're worthless, you're not important, you're not special, kind of undermining her value, essentially, mainly because it's like, because it is kind of interesting because it's like, and it's something Gao kind of got on Bakuto about. The fact of the matter is, you're supposed to be going after the Iron Fist, but the first person you met up with, who did you meet up with? You met up with your pupil. He was like, oh, it was all about getting to the Iron Fist, but it's like, she points out he's always kind of had a soft spot when it came to his pupils, so especially like his pupils that ended up leaving him. So that was just kind of interesting that he tried so hard to get her back multiple times. So, but I mean, there ain't no coming back for him because really quickly, I was kind of halfway expecting Alexandra to kind of pop up again. I mean, to a certain extent, I should have known like that wasn't going to be the case when the fact is that her head got sliced off. But still, But also along with that is like where Danny is going into season 2 is the fact is that he has his mindset on like, Matt told the others to protect the city that he loves. So it, like I said, it lit the fire in everybody, like, Jessica doing her thing, Luke going back to continue doing what he's doing for Harlem even more so now, to kind of not just do this, trying to help out one person, to do this to help out everybody because he has a power. And that's something he was talking to Jessica about. Like, these powers might seem like a burden to you. They always have been. But the fact of the matter is you can do some good with these powers. So, and it seems like Danny's kind of taking that up. I would assume that Tim in Hell's Kitchen kind of filling the role, filling that void for Daredevil now. He is kind of wearing like a green, it looks like almost like tracksuit. Sadly, no yellow mask, but I'm curious if that's supposed to be, going, like, what that means for him going into season 2. Is he going, like, probably balancing, like, that, trying to balance the Rand life, as Danny, but his life is Iron Fist as well as, like, a vigilante. Because, for him, it's like the hand is, in his mind, the hand's been dealt with, that whole thing, with, what was beneath the building, which was, what's the dragon's name? Xiao Lao? Basically like his skeleton. That's what the source is. So it makes you wonder, like, how did they get access to the source originally? I guess they snuck it from Shao, or maybe like in Kunlun they had some stashed around anyway. I mean, that's also another thing that's going to be interesting going into season 2 as well, is like, of Iron Fist, is like where Danny stands with the whole situation. Like his purpose is to fight the Hand, but now obviously you're going to see him fighting the as a vigilante and stuff like that too. I mean, obviously season 1's ending kind of set up like 2 potential antagonists for season 2 anyway, but I'm talking specifically about this, like him finding a new purpose, not on purpose for the Iron Fist to not only destroy, but because originally the Iron Fist was meant to they were all like, Kunlun existed to heal, but the Hand eventually was like, no, we don't need to heal, we need to destroy, we need to crush. Hence the whole Hand aspect of like almost like comparing the monks to an open palm, and like an open hand at giving you a helping hand, whereas the Hand is more like a closed fist ready to strike you down type of thing. So I mean, like I said, like this was so good, and I cannot, like, it's got me even more hyped for like the new seasons of everything. Like I brought up earlier, I do believe the Punisher is next, so I'm definitely interested to see where that all goes. I talked about this in other formats, but this was labeled as a mini-series, so I don't know how to interpret that. Either that, I'm sure a lot of factors will be determined whether or not they do more of these. I hope they do. I know I'm crossing streams here and it's blasphemous, but much like the whole, like, once a year you have like the DC shows kind of coming together, like they had their whole Heroes versus Aliens. That was last year. Technically, yeah, last year, yeah, because that was in 2016 that happened. So I'm sure there's going to be another one this year. But I'm curious to see if they're going to do that, like at the end of each season, kind of bring them together. They do, like Netflix has this labeled as one series, so I don't know whether that's going to represent the fact is that this is like a one-off thing. It's just kind of an intermediary story of just, like I said, leading into the next seasons of all the shows. Like I said, a 0.5 for everyone. Or is it supposed to be a situation where it's like, it's labeled like that because it's like, we'll do more if, it does well and the other shows do well. It will kind of determine whether or not we do more of this. Also, maybe it might be a situation where they might set up different heroes. I'm curious to see what antagonists they would end up facing off against. But then again, I don't know. Maybe it's a situation where it's like, this is a one and done. I hope not. But at the end of the day, if it is, I think I'm okay with that when it's in a sense of what they've established, what they did in this. And like I said, all of this is set up for the next seasons for everything else anyway. So we're going to see the fallout to like where everything lies in each respective show. But I would still love to see more of this, of them coming together again. So, and this might also present the opportunity to see a lot more crossover in the other shows. Like so far, the only show that's had like the major crossover, obviously. I mean, I don't know if it really even counts because Luke Cage being on Jessica Jones first was just there to establish him before, his own show came about. So I don't know. Like I said, I would love to get more, but if they don't, I guess I could live with that. I still would rather have more, but whatever the case may be. I would assume that whole Disney deal thing might have play a role in that as well. That being a contributing factor too. So, but nevertheless, like I'll mention once again, this was so good. I think, like I said, I believe Defenders came and it delivered. That is purely my opinion. I'm halfway curious about how other people felt about it, simply because the better it does, the more likely something like this might happen in the future, like I was saying. But even if other people didn't like it, I personally walked away liking it. I have a difference of opinion from most people, so which is fine. Everyone likes what they like and they dislike what they dislike. So, nevertheless. But really, that's all I really wanted to talk about in this episode. So, till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.